Hello everyone, this is Grayson and it's time for another episode on my channel. Tonight we have Jaeger here and we might have a few other people joining us, but tonight's discussion is going to be about economic warfare. And also since Jaeger, this is the first time being on my channel, I was on his channel and I've done streams with him, but he was never on my channel, so I guess he can introduce himself and then we can get into it.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm Jaeger. I do football and I also do politics on my YouTube channel. Really just to have fun, take a deep dive into some things and, you know, find stuff that's interesting because fun facts a lot of times are interesting. Like I said, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. And so the first thing I want to discuss on this channel would be about economic warfare is probably one of the most noteworthy things of economic warfare. That would be China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's essentially Chinese investments into certain countries, and it's been doing that specifically to get influence in those countries. And
Yeah, exactly. They're using it to get influence and they really do not care whether or not it is a dictator, democracy. They just want their influence. And a lot of times, they can set these debt traps where countries then owe them money for assets they can't afford to have. Like it's a very interesting, and China's also lost quite a bit of money in Africa as well with different investments with different governments.
the thing with China's methods is that I think they did it mostly because their economic growth was too unsustainable, so they actually had to increase it abroad. But it doesn't seem that it's necessarily working out.
Yeah, in some places I would say it probably does, but a lot of it they're just blowing through a lot of money because they don't really understand the culture of some of the places they're going into.
Yeah, like I don't know which nation it is. I think it was Cambodia. They're that they're wasting money on infrastructure projects, which the locals can't even use, by the way, like the casino. Gambling is illegal for Cambodian citizens, so they're not using it. It's for Chinese tourists, and they're losing money because not enough Chinese tourists are going there, and the locals can't use it. So
Yeah, they also there was a country in Africa on the coast. It may have been Namibia or another one where they spent 80 million or 80 no, it was 8 billion to get a mine going, and then the government just took control of it, and China got kind of shut out of the deal. Like they're playing a risky game financially, but like you said, they don't know what countries are going to do after they do these projects.
I mean, the Chinese they really don't care what nation they're investing in, and that can be dangerous because right now they're investing some of their big investments are both Iran and Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't take a diplomatic genius to tell you that those nations are not the best of friends right now.
Yeah, they'll play both sides. Even going through it, the stands as well. They're doing a bunch of projects there as well. And, you get these things where Saudi Arabia and Iran are in a Cold War against one another, but they're going to profit whoever wins because they don't really care with either side. They're just looking to expand their influence.
Well, see, I actually think that I know that China is technically supposed to be the American enemy, but I think in the terms of China's perspective, even though Russia's supposedly the ally, America's the enemy, I actually don't think the Chinese government really wants it to be that way because I think they realistically want to play both sides as always. They don't. They just have. It's just that now the Americans are actually now starting to put up more of a fight against China. So that's the thing. It could just be that they care very little about actual alliances. They would probably invest in the U.S. if it wasn't an enemy.
Well, they still probably have private citizens that do a lot of work, and a lot of their, economy still tied into the United States. United States is one of the bigger buyers of Chinese goods, and if that goes away, they're in a world of hurt because they have to find other people who are willing to pay money for their goods.
Anyway, but that's about China specifically, the Belt and Road Initiative. And so now I wanted to kind of focus back on the America system. There's been a lot of talk in the American mainstream media about building back infrastructure, specifically in the Rust Belt. And so that obviously has made economic protectionism more of a policy, especially in the Republican Party in recent years.
You know, yeah, infrastructure is a tough one because there is a lot of places where state governments haven't done the best job at attacking kind of their infrastructure problems, but it's also not a very efficient system. I live in a state where we joke that the state bird is the traffic cone because every year it seems like they're fixing the same road over and over and over again. So if there's like some technological advancements that they can do, whether it's making tunnels or whether it's doing some other things so the weather doesn't affect the infrastructure as much. But yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of places where it's a sunken cost fallacy where you're just going to keep throwing money into it, even though it's going to go tits up. And then there's other places where, you know, you can do this and then there could potentially be more economic impact from the infrastructure projects.
Wyoming, I did not know that about Wyoming. Apparently they have a road issue. Oh,
yeah, more than one. So
I just thought every road in Wyoming was a dirt road, to be honest.
No, we have paved roads, just not that many traffic lights. But even here, I mean, roads is kind of a really big purchase, like snow plowing. You know, you have the road construction, keeping freeways open, you know, for tourism, because we want tourism's a bigger industry, but also transportation of goods because we have some minerals. You want the roads open, but the infrastructure, like some of the buildings, are really old. They may need some updating, or people are not going to want to move there. One of the issues with Wyoming is nobody wants to move to Wyoming. And you could say, well, if they doll up some of the towns, maybe people would want to move to Wyoming.
Well, reclusives want to move to Wyoming, but other than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's no state income tax, low cost of living, high medium household income. The weather is probably a big thing that drives people off, but Wyoming, like, they've tried for years to incentivize people to move here, businesses, and it seems like people move here and they leave, or they don't want to move here in general. They'd rather just visit during the summer.
I'd live in Wyoming, but that's besides the point. This was more about a protectionism and the general build back America rhetoric. It's been suggested by several neoconservatives on this side of the neoconservative dialogue that you could use protectionism against China, such as cutting off trade. And
you can, but it's going to be extremely difficult as far as, you know, we get cheap goods from China. Are people going to want to spend more? And generally, that's not the case. In economic protectionism, like tariffs and that generally affect us more than it affects them because of the cheap cost of labor.
Yeah. Though there have been other solutions to counter China without necessarily going the protectionist route. There's the TPP, which would essentially put more, I guess what the plan was to put more of the Chinese sweatshops into nations that weren't China, specifically nations like Indonesia and Vietnam, for instance. I think that's kind of a better proposal compared to just full-blown protectionism, even if it doesn't necessarily do as much for the at-home infrastructure. It certainly does good at countering China.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, that's, you know, a lot of infrastructure abroad. I would generally be more in favor of doing 3D printing for a lot of the goods that are produced out of China, like some car parts that could be plastic, 3D print and produce them that way. Innovation, automation would be a way to keep the labor costs down and still produce cheap products domestically.
Anyway, so I guess now this is a pretty slow stream, but I'm guessing that now we kind of question the see, this is the thing. I was hoping to have other people on this stream because they could get more into this. I mean, you and me, I mean, it's an okay stream, but I guess I'm gonna make it pretty short, wrap it up in a few minutes, just because it's a slow night, I'm guessing. So, I guess on the final topic that we'll mention in this short stream, that should the U.S. not have shut down the Super XL pipeline, instead encourage fracking to counter the Russian oil economy?
They shouldn't have shut it down, but also there's still a large part of the pipeline that's intact as well. They only shut down an extension that would have saved some money. But as far as combating Russia, we produce, is it 94% of our oil domestically? And so it's a global commodity, so the price does fluctuate, but that's one of the things that Trump did, is he got it back on American oil, producing it from fracking. That's why the oil prices went down. The combating of Russia will have to probably come from finding a way to get oil into Europe, which gets people into the conspiracy theory that the Syrian civil war is for the pipeline.
The pipeline conspiracy theory. Oh.
Which is funny because one of the pipelines actually goes from Iran into Europe. And Europe is generally more friendly with Iran than we are.
Yeah, I mean, if they really needed to put a pipeline, they could have just put it through Iraq. But apparently, somehow, Syria was just needed.
Well, it's Europe politics because they want to avoid Turkey.
Yeah. Anyway, but with that, I guess we can kind of end this short stream. It's been about 13 minutes. Do you have any final remarks?
We talked about a few topics. It is a short stream. I just want to thank you for having me on.
All right. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next video.